The October sun crept slowly down the cream-colored walls of the bedroom, peeking through the gap between the thick curtains. Haley had been lying awake for about an hour, listening to the sounds of the morning shower and her husband's footsteps in the dressing room, the soft tinkling of hangers, the rustle of clothes, the familiar sounds of their daily routine. Grant was packing his backpack, methodically folding his clothes, thermal underwear, socks, a sweater. Haley watched his movements through half-closed eyelids. In 12 years of marriage, she'd learned all his habits, even the way he folded things, first rolling them into a tight roll, then tucking them neatly into the backpack. "Dry clothes and good boots are the most important things in hunting," he repeated, not noticing his wife's faint wince at the words. Twice a year, Grant went hunting with friends, duck hunting in the fall and wild boar hunting in the spring. He usually came back 3 or 4 days later, smelling of fire and gunpowder with a couple of shot birds, or empty-handed if the hunt didn't go well. Haley didn't like these absences, but accepted them as a necessary part of their lives. Men needed a break from their families sometimes, her mother had said. Packing went on as usual. Grant methodically checked the contents of his backpack, checking the list on his phone every now and then. Haley realized that he'd never been so pedantic about packing before. Usually, he'd just thrown the essentials in the car and left at dawn. "What time is Mike picking you up?" she asked, sitting up in bed and pulling on a silk robe. 9 o'clock, Grant answered, not lifting his eyes from his backpack. "We're going straight to the airport to catch the day's hunt." "The airport?" The thought scratched Haley's mind, but she kept silent. In the past, they'd always gone hunting in Mike's car 4 hours down the highway to the preserve. Grant crouched on the edge of the bed, pulling on his socks. His movements were jittery, hurried, not at all like his usual leisurely morning routine. He didn't even turn when Haley got up and headed for the bathroom. Standing under the hot jets of the shower, she thought back over the last few weeks. Grant was staying late at work more often, talking less about his business. There were more urgent meetings in the evenings. He always carried his phone with him and left the screen down. It all added up to a picture Haley didn't want to think about. When she returned to the bedroom, Grant had already gone down to the kitchen. From the open window came the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the clinking of dishes. Haley walked over to the mirror, examining her reflection. At 32, she looked no worse than she had 10 years ago when they'd met, except that the wrinkles in the corners of her eyes had become more noticeable, and there was a subtle tiredness in her gaze. Breakfast passed in the usual silence. Grant was looking at something on his phone. Haley was scrolling through the news feed on her tablet. Maple leaves rustled outside the window. The mailman delivered the morning mail. The neighbor's Labrador barked at the joggers running by. At 8:55, a car honked outside the house. Grant jumped up, hurriedly finishing his coffee. He kissed Haley on the cheek, quickly, almost in passing, picked up his backpack and headed for the exit. "Call me when you get there," she said after him. "Sure," he said from the doorway. "The connection might be bad, but I'll try." Haley watched him get into the car. It wasn't Mike driving, but the cab driver. "To the airport," the memory popped up again. She pulled out her phone, opened her contacts. Mike Devereaux, the second number on her frequent call list after Grant. Her finger hovered over the call button, but she never pressed it. The first message came 4 hours later. The picture, the canal, the gondolas, the distinctive Venetian facades. The caption, "Look how happy he is without you." Haley took a long look at the blurry figure of the man in the background. Grant, wearing a light-colored linen suit instead of a hunting jacket. Next to him, a woman's silhouette. The phone slipped from his trembling fingers and fell to the kitchen table. The house was silent. Only the clock on the wall ticked and the leaves rustled outside the window, the same morning as hundreds of others. Only now it was really the last. Nika had first seen Grant 2 months ago at the presentation of the River Plaza Hotel renovation project. She'd been holding an events meeting in the renovated conference room when he'd walked in, accompanied by contractors. Tall, trim, in an impeccably tailored suit, Grant stood out among the foremen in casual clothes. Their acquaintance had begun with a minor dispute over the placement of the stage in the banquet hall. Nika had insisted on a classic layout. Grant had suggested an unconventional solution. She remembered how fervently she'd defended her position, waving the floor plan, and he'd listened with a slight half-smile. "You have a lot of experience in organizing events, Miss Ashton," he'd said then, "but I've been building halls like this for 20 years. Believe me, my solution will work better." There was no condescension in his voice, only the confidence of a man who knew his business. Nika suddenly gave in. Later it turned out that he was right. The new layout was indeed more convenient. After that meeting, they crossed paths more often at the hotel. Grant checked the progress of the work every day. Nika was preparing a series of events for the opening of the renovated complex. They bumped into each other in the hallways, exchanged brief remarks, sometimes had coffee together in the lobby bar. One protracted meeting ended late in the afternoon. Nika was gathering papers when Grant offered her a ride home. They talked for 2 hours in the car, parked outside her house. He talked about his projects. She about the most unusual wedding she'd organized. It was then that she noticed the wedding ring on his finger. Somehow, that didn't stop her. Their first kiss happened in an empty conference room after another meeting. The touch had been light, almost weightless, but it had already felt the tension that had been building up between them for weeks. "I'm married," he said then. "I know," she replied. They met intermittently, quick lunches in inconspicuous cafes, rare evenings in her apartment, short conversations. Nika didn't ask about his family, he didn't tell. It was like dancing on the edge of a precipice, exciting and dangerous at the same time. The idea for the trip to Venice had come spontaneously. Grant was talking about the upcoming hunt. Nika was leafing through a catalog of wedding venues in Italy. "Come with me," he said suddenly. "Instead of hunting, 4 days in Venice." "What about your hunting friends?" She grinned. "I'll tell them the trip was canceled." Nika agreed without hesitation. She booked a room in a small hotel away from the tourist routes, bought tickets for different flights. Everything like in a cheap novel: secret affair, forbidden passion, stolen weekend. The decision to send photos to his wife came suddenly when she saw their first photo together in front of the canal. Grant looked relaxed and happy, like she'd never seen him before. For a moment, Nika felt uncomfortable at the thought of that happiness being stolen from another woman. But the guilt was quickly replaced by a strange excitement. She'd found Haley's number in Grant's phone a month ago when he'd taken a shower. Now, it was time to use it. Nika picked an angle where Grant was clearly visible, signed the photo, and hit send. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a doubt stirred. Why was she doing this? But Nika habitually brushed it away. The sun was setting, coloring the waters of the canal in golden tones. Grant was waiting for her at a table in a sidewalk cafe, looking over the menu. Nika lingered for a moment, admiring his profile. At that moment, the phone in her purse vibrated. It was a message about a photo delivery. It was a start. The morning in Venice began with the smell of fresh pastries and coffee wafting from the small bakery across the street from the hotel. Nika stood at the window, wrapped in a white robe, and watched the city slowly wake up. Grant was still asleep, sprawled across the wide bed, unusually relaxed, without his usual business suit and mask of confident authority. Their room was on the 3rd floor of an old palazzo converted into a boutique hotel. High ceilings, antique furniture, mirrors in heavy gilded frames, everything breathed history and romance. Nika caught her reflection in one of them. Mussed hair, a soft smile, a sparkle in her eyes. She looked satisfied. that special satisfaction of a woman who'd gotten what she wanted. Taking out her cell phone, Nika took several pictures of Grant sleeping. One of them was a particularly good shot of his hand without his wedding ring on the bedside table. After thinking for a second, she sent the photo to Haley with the caption, "Morning. How did you sleep in an empty bed?" For breakfast, they went down to the little cafe around the corner. Grant was unaccustomedly animated, joking, telling funny stories from construction. Nika listened to him half-heartedly, enjoying being the only woman in his life, even if only for these short 4 days. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her distracted look. "About how strange things are." She stirred the sugar in her cappuccino. "You know, I never planned on becoming a married man's mistress." Grant frowned. He didn't like it when she brought up their status. Nika knew that, but sometimes she deliberately teased him with such remarks. Something dark and vengeful awoke in her at times like that. After breakfast, they walked through the narrow streets holding hands like ordinary tourists. Nika stopped every now and then at store windows, trying on hats, fidgeting in front of mirrors. In one of the boutiques, she bought a red silk dress, too revealing for a family dinner, but just right for a date with her lover. By lunchtime, they reached Piazza San Marco. Grant insisted on going up to the bell tower. The view from the top was stunning. Tiled roofs, canals, the sea in the distance. Nika took a few general photos and then, waiting until Grant was distracted by the panorama, photographed him separately. "Look how happy he looks. Probably the first time in a long time he can be himself instead of playing the role of model husband," she sent to Haley. At lunch at the restaurant on the water, Nika watched the other couples. That older couple over there. They must have been together for decades. The newlyweds at the next table, eyes locked on each other in love. A family with children 2 tables away. All these people were living some sort of proper, measured life. And what did she have? A rented apartment, a job, flings. At 29, she still hadn't found someone she wanted to build a future with. Or she had, but she'd missed him, a thought that stabbed her in the back. In the evening, they took a gondola ride. The gondolier, an elderly Venetian with a kindly wrinkled face, hummed "O Sol Mio" softly. Grant put his arm around her shoulders. She rested her head on his chest. A perfect romantic moment, if you didn't think about the fact that his legal wife was waiting for him somewhere in another city. Nika took selfies against the backdrop of the sunset, catching their reflection in the dark canal water in the frame. "A romantic evening in Venice. Sorry you're missing it," she wrote to Haley. In the elevator mirror going up to the room, Nika noticed how her face had changed. There was some predatory confidence. She caught her gaze and wondered if she was really enjoying herself, or if she was just getting revenge on Haley, Grant, or herself. The morning of her second day in Venice began with a commotion in the hotel lobby. Nika was on her way down to breakfast when she heard a familiar voice, a low, husky voice. She froze on the last steps of the stairs, unable to believe her ears. Julian Reed was standing at the front desk, leaning casually against the polished wood. Still the same perfectly cut jacket, only now it was not made of cheap fabric, as it had been 5 years ago, but clearly from a famous brand. His facial features were sharper, his temples graying slightly. Time had not spoiled him, quite the opposite. Nika retreated into the shade of a tall floor vase of flowers. Julian was discussing something with the receptionist, looking through documents. She made out phrases about the restaurant, licenses, suppliers. So he'd built his own chain of restaurants after all, just as he'd once dreamed. She remembered their last dinner together, when he'd talked about his plans. A small apartment on the outskirts of town, cheap wine in glasses, dreams of his own business. She'd listened, half listening then, thinking about her impending meeting with another. What was his name? Mark, I think. Or was it Mike? It didn't seem important now. Nika tried to slip to the exit unnoticed, but her heel clicked treacherously on the marble floor. Julian turned around. She could see his pupils dilate as he recognized her. A second of confusion, and a polite smile appeared on his face, too polite to be genuine. "Veronica?" What a surprise. His voice sounded even, as if they'd broken up a week ago after a casual date, not 5 years ago with a scandal and broken hearts. "Julian, I didn't expect to see you here." There was an awkward pause. Nika could feel her cheeks blushing under his scrutinizing gaze. 5 years ago, she'd been the one in control. Now, something had subtly changed. "I'm expanding my business in Europe." He was the first to break the silence. "Are you here for work, or are you on vacation?" "Resting." She tried to make it sound casual. At that moment, Grant appeared on the stairs. Nika saw Julian glance over his figure, noticed the lack of luggage, drew conclusions. Something akin to disappointment flashed in his eyes. "I won't keep you." He inclined his head slightly. "Have a pleasant rest." All through breakfast, Nika was distracted. Grant was saying something about the day's plans, but she barely heard him. Julian's face was in front of her eyes, the one now, confident and alien, and the one before, open, in love, trusting. "Do you know him?" Grant asked suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. "Who?" She tried to act confused. "The man in the lobby. I saw you two talking." "An old acquaintance," Nika shrugged, hoping it sounded casual enough. "It had been a while." Grant nodded, but she noticed the frown on his brow. He was experienced enough to know that such chance encounters were rarely easy. The day passed like a blur. They walked around the city, had lunch at some fancy restaurant, took a boat ride. Nika took pictures and sent them to Haley, but now it seemed like a mechanical act that had lost its poignancy. That evening, back at the hotel, she ran into Julian at the bar. He was sitting behind the bar, studying some papers. Their gazes met in the mirror behind the bartender. For a moment it seemed to Nika that time had turned back, the same attentive gaze, the same half-smile. Only now there was no warmth in it. That evening Julian sat up late working on papers in the hotel bar. His glass of whiskey was untouched, and instead of the numbers in the contract, his eyes were filled with images from 5 years ago. They'd met at a small restaurant where he worked as an assistant chef, and Nika was officiating her first wedding on her own. She scurried around the room, dispensing instructions, while he furtively watched her from the kitchen. At the end of the evening, she stopped by to thank the staff and accidentally knocked over a tray of desserts. Julian spent an hour helping her make new ones. Their romance developed rapidly. 3 months later, she moved in with him. 6 months later, they were already discussing marriage. Julian remembered the evenings they sat in the tiny kitchen of his rented apartment, drinking cheap wine and making plans. He talked about his dream of opening a chain of Italian restaurants, she about her desire to create her own wedding agency. It took him 2 weeks to choose a ring. Not the most expensive diamond, but he went into debt to buy it. He proposed at the very restaurant where they'd met. Nika cried and said she'd never been happier. The first alarm bells went off about 2 months before the wedding. Nika started staying late at work more often, sharing less of her plans, answering the phone less often. Julian wrote it all off as pre-wedding stress and preparation for an important event. She was organizing the wedding of some rich client. That night he decided to surprise her. He bought her favorite wine, went to the restaurant to get fresh pasta. He wanted to prepare a romantic dinner at home. He called to let her know he was coming over, but her phone was off. Probably dead battery, he thought at the time. Julian had the keys to her apartment. They'd agreed they'd live there after the wedding. He opened the door and walked into the half-dark hallway. Muffled voices and laughter came from the bedroom. A man's. Julian froze, clutching the grocery bag in his hands. Scraps of thoughts raced through his head. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe she was watching a movie. But then there was a long, drawn-out moan. He pushed open the bedroom door. There was enough light from the street lamps to see everything in great detail. The crumpled sheets, the intertwined bodies, Nikki's hair scattered across the pillow. Her engagement ring gleamed dimly on her ring finger. The bag slipped from her hands. The bottle shattered on the parquet, red wine spilling out in a dark puddle. Nika shrieked, tried to cover herself with the blanket. Her lover, a tall, athletic brunette, silently reached for his shirt. "Julian, I can explain," her voice shook. He turned and walked out. His ears buzzed, nausea rising to his throat. Nika ran out next, wrapped in a sheet, trying to say something about fear of the wedding, about doubts, about making a mistake. He wouldn't listen. At home, he put all her things in boxes, gathered together photos, movie tickets, postcards, everything that reminded him of their relationship. Texted her to pick up her things. She showed up 2 days later, but he didn't answer the door. She slipped the ring under the door in an envelope. Julian sold it a week later. The money went toward a down payment on equipment for his future restaurant. He turned the pain of betrayal into fuel for his goal. Now, 5 years later, sitting at the bar of a Venetian hotel, Julian realized he should be grateful to Nika. If it hadn't been for that blow, he might still be a dreamer building air castles in the kitchen of a rented apartment. Something in her behavior with her current companion seemed vaguely familiar to him. The same cautious glances around, the same manner of holding herself in public. But that was no longer his business. He had his own life, his own way, and in that life there was no more room for the ghosts of the past. Haley never realized that silence could be so deafening. The house, usually filled with the sounds of her husband's presence, the noise of the shower in the morning, the tapping of laptop keys, the clinking of a cup against a saucer, now seemed unnaturally empty. She mechanically performed the usual activities, checking email, answering client calls, reviewing sketches of new projects. Work had always been her lifeline, but now even it didn't help distract her from the intrusive thoughts and the ever-present photos. By the evening of the second day, Haley pulled out a box of old photos. Their wedding 12 years ago, she in a bouffant dress, Grant in an austere suit. Their honeymoon in Bali, their first vacation together in Greece. Buying a house, such happy faces, such genuine smiles. When did things start to change? Maybe 3 years ago, when Grant got a promotion and went into work. Or earlier, when they decided to put off having children for the sake of their careers. Or later, when family dinners had turned into everyone sitting silently with their phones. The phone vibrated again. Another photo. Grant in an elegant linen suit by the dock, a blurry female silhouette nearby. A stroll through evening Venice. Romantic, isn't it? Haley grinned. This woman clearly meant to hurt, but somehow her messages only caused fatigue. Haley stood up, walked to the kitchen, pulled out the bottle of red wine she and Grant usually opened on special occasions, poured a glass, took a sip. The flavor seemed different, or was it her perception? She'd started noticing the signs a long time ago. A new perfume that smelled faintly of his shirt, late meetings, more frequent business trips, bills from restaurants they'd never been to together, the withdrawal in bed, the excuses about being tired at work. Haley opened her laptop, logged into her email. Emails from clients, newsletters, notices from the bank. Her gaze caught on Grant's credit card statement, 2 airline tickets to Venice, a hotel reservation. She didn't even try to catch it, just watched their carefully constructed facade of a prosperous family crumble. New message. A photo of Grant in a restaurant with the canal and gondolas in the background. He ordered the best wine. For me, not you. Haley finished her glass and replied for the first time in days. Tell him I found the receipts for the tickets. And yes, the wine is really great. We bought it for our 10th anniversary. She wasn't going to throw a tantrum or demand an explanation. wouldn't beg him to come back or threaten divorce. 12 years of marriage had taught her one thing: every man makes his own choices. In the morning, Haley called her lawyer just an appointment for next week. Then she opened the airline's website. The flight to Venice was in 3 hours. She wasn't going to make a scene or dramatic reveal. She just wanted to look into the eyes of the woman who thought she was hurting her with her photos. In the bedroom, Haley pulled a small suitcase out of the closet, carefully folded a few dresses, her favorite shoes, and her makeup bag. At the bottom of the linen drawer, she found an envelope with a stash. She always saved money for a rainy day. Who knew that day would come in sunny Venice? The little cafe was hidden in a narrow alley near the Rialto Bridge. Nika wandered there by chance, while Grant was in a business meeting. He suddenly received an urgent call from his partners and apologized that he had to receive them. The cafe smelled of fresh pastries and strong coffee. Nika chose a table by the window and ordered a cappuccino. An old fan was spinning lazily above her head, and tourists with maps and cameras wandered by the window. She didn't see Julian right away. He was sitting in the far corner with a laptop and a stack of papers. His presence here seemed so natural, as if they had arranged to meet. Julian looked up from the screen, meeting her gaze. After hesitating for a second, he nodded in greeting. Nika could have pretended not to notice him, or simply waved and stayed put. Instead, she picked up her cup and made her way to his table. "May I sit down?" He silently pointed to a vacant chair. They sat in silence for a while. He was looking over papers. She was stirring the cooling coffee. "How are your restaurants?" Nika finally asked. "Not bad. I'm opening my 5th this year." Julian closed his laptop. "Are you still organizing weddings?" "Not anymore. I work in a hotel doing business events." There was another pause. At a neighboring table, an elderly couple was arguing over a city map. A waiter was wiping down tables, and the coffee machine was hissing from the kitchen. "You know," Nika said suddenly, "I often think of our kitchen, that small one, with the cabinets falling apart." "With the leaky faucet," Julian added, "and the ever-present slamming shutter, and your endless culinary experiments, which you always tried honestly, even when they failed." They smiled at each other, for the first time in this meeting genuinely, without strain. "Why did you do it, Nika?" Julian asked quietly. "We were happy, weren't we?" She lowered her eyes. She couldn't find the right words. All the explanations that had seemed so convincing 5 years ago now sounded false, even in her own head. "I guess I was scared. That everything was too right, too good. You loved me with such a sincere, pure love, and I—" She paused, searching for words. "I didn't believe I was worthy of such love." "Is that why you decided to ruin it?" "That's why I decided to ruin it first, before you realized what I was really like." Julian shook his head. "I knew what you were, with all your flaws, your doubts, your fears, and I loved the real you, not some made-up image of you." There was no accusation in his voice, only weariness and something like regret. At that moment, Nika caught a glimpse of Grant's reflection in the window. He was standing on the other side of the street, looking directly at them. Their gazes met in the window pane, and Nika saw herself for the first time through his eyes, a woman playing some game of her own again. "Your date?" Julian asked, following her gaze. "Yes. He's married, isn't he?" Nika remained silent, but her silence was more eloquent than any answer. "It's happening all over again, Nika. Only now you're not destroying your happiness. You're destroying someone else's." She wanted to object, to say something harsh, to defend herself. But suddenly she realized he was right. Everything was repeating itself. Her fear of real feelings, her desire to control the situation, her habit of ruining what could have been something meaningful. Grant turned and walked quickly away. Nika should have rushed after him to explain, to justify herself. Instead, she continued to sit, staring into her cooled cup of coffee. A text from Haley came as Nika was walking back to the hotel. "Would you like to meet for a glass of wine? Since you're so kind to share pictures of my husband with me, I think we can chat in person." Nika stopped in the middle of the street, rereading the text. She had expected anything: hysteria, threats, silence, but not this calm, almost social invitation. The tone of the message had the confidence of a man in complete control of the situation. In the room, Nika checked her phone first thing. Dozens of sent photos with sarcastic captions. Now they seemed pathetic and petty. She flipped through them, trying to figure out what she wanted to prove with these pictures. Her superiority? Her power over another man's husband? Her right to happiness at someone else's expense? The conversation with Julian wouldn't leave her mind. "You're ruining someone else's happiness," the words rang in her ears, echoing painfully. 5 years ago she'd ruined their shared future. Now she was trying to destroy someone else's present. Nika walked to the mirror and looked at her reflection. A beautiful, well-groomed woman, used to getting what she wanted. But what did she really want to get now? Grant? Power over someone else's feelings? Or just further proof of her inability to build a real relationship? Grant returned from their meeting with Julian somber. He hadn't made a scene, hadn't asked questions, just said he was tired and wanted to rest. Now he was lying on his bed, staring at his phone, and Nika felt an invisible wall growing between them. She opened their first picture together in Venice. The happy smiles, the sincere joy in their eyes. It all seemed fake now, fake, like a theatrical production, where everyone plays his role. He, a man in love, running away from a boring marriage; she, a femme fatale who stole someone else's happiness. New message from Haley. "I'm staying at the Hotel Danielle, room 312. I expect you at 8 o'clock tonight." Nika felt nausea coming up to her throat. It was one thing to send gloating messages to a stranger, but it was another to come face to face with the woman whose life you were trying to ruin. She remembered how she herself had stood in front of the mirror at the bridal salon, trying on a dress for her wedding to Julian. How happy she'd been then, how she'd believed in their future. And then she'd ruined it herself, afraid of that happiness. Now history was repeating itself, only the roles were reversed. She had become the very destroyer she had once let into her life, the one who brought chaos into someone else's home, hiding behind beautiful words about passion and the right to happiness. Nika looked at Grant. He had fallen asleep, still holding his cell phone in his hand. The screen was glowing with a photo of him and Haley at some kind of celebration, both smiling. The screensaver hadn't changed in all these months of their affair. A small but telling detail. It was 3 hours until 8 p.m. Nika opened her suitcase, took out the red dress, the one she'd bought on her first day in Venice. It was supposed to be a symbol of her triumph, but it had become just another costume in a play that wasn't going according to the script she'd planned. The hotel bar was almost empty, the quietest time between the afternoon lull and the evening rush of guests. Julian was looking over some papers when Grant sat down beside him. On the desk in front of him was a business card he'd obviously picked up at the front desk. "I'm sorry to bother you. I represent a construction company. We're just looking for a partner for a new project. A hotel with a gourmet restaurant. I'm told you own a successful chain." Julian put the papers aside. He recognized Nikki's companion, but didn't show it. They started talking business, about restaurant concepts, investments, payback periods. Grant spoke knowledgeably, asked the right questions. "How did you manage to develop the chain so quickly?" he asked in between. "Sometimes personal failures are the best motivation." Julian took a sip of whiskey. 5 years ago, I was supposed to get married. My fiancée was working as a wedding planner, and we were making big plans. And then I caught her with another man 2 weeks before the wedding. Grant froze with his glass to his lips. Julian noticed his shoulders tense. sold my engagement ring, invested in my first restaurant. She taught me an important lesson. Some people just aren't cut out for real relationships. They need the game, the drama, the sense of power over other people's lives. What happened to her? Grant's voice sounded muffled. Veronica? She's here in Venice. You've probably seen her. Tall brunette, works in event management. There was a heavy pause. Grant slowly set his glass down on the table. His face was petrified, his cheekbones set. Thank you for the information. About the restaurant, I mean. He rose from the table. I'll think about your offer. Nika waited for Grant in the room, getting ready for her meeting with Haley. He walked in without knocking, stopping at the door. You're not changing, are you? He asked calmly. Still the same games. She froze with lipstick in her hand. What are you talking about? I spoke to your ex-fiancé. Interesting story about a wedding gone wrong. The lipstick slipped from her fingers, leaving a red streak on the dressing table. Nika felt the room begin to spin. It was a long time ago, she tried to smile. I was different. You were? And you're sending pictures to my wife because you've gotten better? Nika jumped up, walked over to him, tried to take his hand. He pulled away. Grant, listen. No, you listen. I thought there was something special between us. Turns out I'm just another character in your play. No, you're not. Her voice broke. I really... What? You love me? He grinned. Like you loved him? Or like she loved the man she cheated on him with? Nika ran around the room. Everything was falling apart. She was used to being in control, to managing men's feelings, to being the mistress of the situation. And now that control was slipping through her fingers like sand. I'm meeting with Haley in 2 hours. She tried to regain her confidence. We can talk about this later. Don't bother. Grant headed for the door. I'll talk to her myself. The door closed. Nika sank down on the bed. Her mind was spinning with scraps of thoughts. What to say to Haley, how to explain everything to Grant, how to keep control of the situation. But for the first time in her life, she couldn't find the right words. Room 312 at the Hotel Danielle turned out to be a small suite overlooking the canal. Haley met Nika in a homemade silk suit, no makeup, with a glass of wine in her hand. She looked tired but calm, not a trace of the hysteria or anger Nika had expected. Come in. Haley nodded to the chair by the window. Wine? Great Chianti. Grant and I bought a whole case last year in Tuscany. Nika stood there with her purse clutched in her hands. Why did you call me here? I wanted to meet the woman who's trying so hard to destroy my marriage. Haley took a sip from her glass. You know, your pictures. They say a lot about you. Every frame, every caption is a cry for help. You don't have to analyze me. I'm not. I'm just trying to figure out what you were trying to prove. To yourself? To me? To Grant? At that moment, the door opened without knocking. Grant stood there, disheveled, his eyes reddened. I have something to tell you both. He strode into the room, stopping between them. Haley, I screwed up. Nika, I'm sorry, but it's all a mistake. Haley silently poured another glass of wine and held it out to her husband. Sit down. It's about time we talked. The next hour passed in a strange, almost surreal conversation. They talked about how Grant and Haley had drifted apart, mired in work and domestic problems, about how Nika had used that crack in their relationship to sneak into other people's lives, about the photos that were supposed to hurt but instead only exposed the emptiness inside Nika herself. You know what the funny thing is? Haley was looking out the window at the evening Venice. I'm grateful to you, Nika. Your pictures made me remember how happy Grant could be, how he used to be with me. Nika felt the tears coming to her throat. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did. Haley interrupted her gently. You wanted to steal someone else's happiness because you don't believe you deserve your own. I've seen pictures of you with Grant, and you're not in love with him. You're in love with the idea of being loved." Grant looked from one woman to the other in silence. His eyes were understanding. For the first time in a long time, he saw the situation clearly. "I'm going home," he said at last. "If you'll let me, Haley." "Not now," she shook her head. "We both need time, and a good marriage counselor." Nika stood up. There was nothing else holding her here. At the door, she turned around. "I'm sorry. Both of you." "You know what the worst part about destroying someone else's happiness is?" Haley asked quietly. "That it doesn't add to your own." Nika walked silently out into the hallway. The elevator brought her to the lobby where guests were bustling about. Hall attendants were carrying suitcases and soft music was playing. Just an ordinary evening in a Venetian hotel. The beginning of a vacation for some, the end of illusions for others. She pulled out her phone, deleted all the pictures she'd sent Haley. It wouldn't undo what she'd done, but maybe it would be the first step toward something new, to a life without masks and games, to finding the real her. Haley woke up at the crack of dawn. The canal outside her window was already filled with the sounds of the waking city, the hum of water cabs, the roll call of fishermen, the voices of early tourists. Grant slept on the couch in the room's living room. They'd decided it was the right thing to do. Yesterday's conversation had left behind a strange desolation. There was no anger, no despair, just fatigue and a kind of painful clarity. Over a cup of morning coffee, they talked about practical things, the house they would have to sell, the joint accounts they would have to split, who would break the news to their parents. "I'll get an apartment," Grant said, stirring sugar into his espresso. "Not far from work." Haley nodded. She thought about their big empty house, the closets of his things, the pictures of them together on the walls. 12 years of life that would have to be carefully sorted out and boxed up. "You know," she looked at her husband, "I don't hate you. I suppose I should, but I can't. I hate myself enough," he grinned unhappily, "for ruining everything. It's both of our fault. We just stopped talking, shut ourselves away in our own world. And Nika, she just filled the void between us. In another hotel, in a small room overlooking the tiled roofs, Nika was packing her suitcase. Her flight was in 3 hours. The red dress she'd bought on the first day was still hanging in her closet. She decided to leave it here, along with the other shards of her illusions. The front desk called to say that the cab would arrive in 15 minutes. Nika took one last look around the room, checking to see if she'd forgotten anything. There was a postcard of Venice on the nightstand by the bed she'd meant to send it to her mother, but she'd never written a line. In the hallway, she ran into Julian. He was rolling a small suitcase toward the exit. Apparently, he was leaving too. "Coming home?" he asked. "Yes. And you?" "Milan. I have to finalize a deal with the suppliers." They stood in the middle of the hall, not knowing what else to say to each other. 5 years ago, their goodbye had been loud and painful. Now it seemed as natural as the change of seasons. "I'm glad we met," Julian finally said. "It helped me let go of the past." Nika nodded. She knew what he meant. The airport greeted them with the usual bustle. Grant and Haley were sitting at opposite ends of the lounge. They were due on the same flight, but they decided to give each other space to think. Nika spotted them walking to her check-in desk, but pretended not to recognize them. On the plane, she pulled out her laptop, opened her work email. Life went on, meetings, projects, deadlines. Maybe she should look for a job in another city, start fresh. Haley stared out the porthole as Venice turned into a small dot on the map. The city that was supposed to be a place of betrayal was suddenly a place of truth. Grant sat a few rows behind. She could see his reflection in the glass. They had a long journey ahead of them, but now it was a journey to themselves, not to each other. Julian was already signing a contract in his company's Milan office. A new restaurant, new plans, new horizons. Venice was left behind. The city where the ghosts of the past had finally found peace. The airplane was gaining altitude. Below was a sea of clouds, golden in the rays of the setting sun. Somewhere out there, in the tangle of streets and canals, remained their Venetian stories of love and betrayal, of truth and lies, of loss and gain. Now, each had a new story to write. The first week after their return passed in routine business. Nika returned to work at the hotel, immersed in the organization of a major banking conference. The schedule was tight: meetings with contractors, coordinating menus, checking technical equipment. By evening, she fell on the bed without energy, not even taking apart her suitcase from Venice, which stood in the corner of the bedroom. On Friday, her mother called to invite her to a family dinner. Nika declined, citing work. She wasn't ready for the questions about her vacation, the discussion of her personal life, the usual hints that at her age it was time to settle down. Haley set up her new apartment, a small studio in a neighborhood overlooking the park. She packed up her things from her and Grant's house, leaving him a note telling him where she'd moved his clothes and papers, hung her favorite black and white photos on the walls, bought new bedding, rearranged the furniture 3 times until she found the perfect arrangement. At work, she immersed herself in a new project, renovating an old industrial building into an art space. The client wanted to keep the industrial charm but add modern elements. Haley spent her evenings sketching, forgetting to eat dinner. Grant moved into the office apartment the company kept for visiting professionals. Standard furnishings, impersonal walls, minimal personal belongings, just like a hotel. He spent 12 hours at work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office. On Wednesday, he'd walked into the supermarket and absent-mindedly bought Haley's favorite cheese, reached for her brand of coffee out of habit. He only came to his senses at the checkout, looking at the groceries in his cart. He had to go back and pick it all up again, now just for himself. Nika accidentally met Grant's colleague in the elevator of the business center, where she came to meet a client. He nodded at her as if she were a stranger. Apparently, Grant hadn't told her what had happened at work, and rightly so. Over the weekend, she'd been sorting through her closet and found Julian's t-shirt, an old, worn t-shirt with the logo of his favorite band. Strange that it had survived so many moves. Nika wanted to throw it away, but instead she washed it and put it back in the closet. Haley walked past her and Grant's favorite coffee shop every morning. The first time, she turned down another street, then forced herself to go in. The barista said hello as usual, didn't even ask why she was always alone now. Grant joined a gym, bought a year's membership. He ran on the treadmill in the mornings and worked with weights in the evenings. The physical fatigue helped keep her mind off things. In the locker room, someone was discussing problems with his wife. Grant quickly packed his things and left. Nika stopped checking social media, deleted dating apps from her phone. She went to the hairdresser and got a short haircut. In the evening, she took a long look at her new reflection in the mirror. A different hairstyle, a different look. On Friday, she stayed late at the office. When she came out, the sky had already darkened. The lights were on in the windows of the houses. She walked, looking at the people in the lighted windows. Someone was having a family dinner. Someone was watching TV. Someone was rocking a baby. Ordinary evenings of ordinary people. At home, Nika finally unpacked the Venetian suitcase, put the clothes in the wash, threw away the hotel and store brochures, found an untouched postcard with a view of the city, sat down to write to her mother but instead just wrote, "I'm sorry," and tore up the postcard. Nika sat over the blank sheet of paper for a long time. In this day and age of electronic messaging, writing a real letter was unexpectedly difficult. She used up half the notebook before she found the right words. "Dear Julian, found your t-shirt. Strange how it survived all my moves and life changes. Remember when you used to wear it to rehearsals at the restaurant? Said it was good luck. I don't know why I kept it. probably as a reminder that there was once something real in my life. I'm returning it. You should keep it now, along with other proof that your dream has come true. Nika. She carefully folded the t-shirt, already faded with a barely legible print. She stuffed the letter into an envelope, added the address of his restaurant in Milan, which she'd found on the company's website. The reply came a week later, a thick envelope with the restaurant chain's logo. Inside was her old scarf, dark blue, with embroidered stars, and a letter written in familiar, sprawling handwriting. Nika, funny thing is, I kept one of your things too. I had this scarf from our last Christmas. Remember when we were walking along the waterfront? You were freezing, so I wrapped my coat around you, and you said the stars on the scarf shone brighter than the city lights. The t-shirt doesn't bring luck anymore. I know now that luck depends only on ourselves, but thanks for keeping it. Julian. Nika reread the letter a few times, then pulled out the scarf. It still smelled of spices. Apparently, Julian had stored it somewhere in the kitchen. Julian, it's strange to write letters in the age of messengers, but there's something about it. It's like talking to someone without rushing, without the need for an immediate response. You know, I've been thinking a lot about us, how different our love was. You loved openly and honestly, and I was always looking around for something more. I realize now it wasn't you. I just didn't know how to love. Nika. His answer came faster this time. Nika, maybe it's not about knowing how to love, but the willingness to be loved? Remember how you reacted to every gift I gave you, as if you didn't believe you were worthy of it? I forgave you a long time ago, and I guess I should say thank you. Without that story, I wouldn't be who I am today. Julian. P.S. I'm in your town next week, opening a new restaurant. If you want, we can have coffee. Just coffee, no expectations or promises. Nika sat with the letter in her hands, looking out the window at the evening city. 5 years ago, she would have seen this invitation as a chance to take it all back, an attempt to start over. But now she realized some things couldn't be brought back. You can only create something new. Julian, I know a good place. They make terrible coffee but amazingly good croissants, and it's never crowded in the morning. Nika. P.S. No expectations or promises, just two people who once knew each other and now want to get reacquainted. She sent the letter and felt light for the first time in a long time. Whatever happened next would be their conscious choice, not an attempt to bring back the past. In 3 months, the city had managed to change from the heat of summer to the cool of fall. The leaves in the park across the street from Haley's new apartment had turned golden. Frost was appearing on the grass in the mornings, and sunsets were coming earlier and earlier. Haley had almost gotten used to living alone. Her studio was slowly taking on details: watercolor sketches on the walls, a collection of vintage vases on the windowsill, an old chair she'd bought at a flea market. No reminders of her past life, just things that reflected her own tastes and hobbies. She and Grant had finalized their divorce quickly and without unnecessary drama. They divided their assets, sold the house, split the bills. At the signing of the papers, both looked calm, as if they were concluding a normal transaction. Only their wedding rings were tugging at their pockets. Grant moved to another part of town, closer to the new construction project. He had been promoted to project manager. Now he was responsible for the construction of an entire apartment complex. The job took up all his time, but he was fine with that. He started taking rock climbing lessons on the weekends. The new hobby helped keep his head clear. One day, he and Haley met by chance at the supermarket. He was rolling a grocery cart. She was picking out wine. They exchanged polite smiles and a few phrases about work. Haley noticed he'd lost weight and grown a beard. Grant noted her new haircut and calm look. Nika was slowly changing her life. She quit her job at the hotel and found a job at a company that organized business conferences. Now she was in charge of large-scale events, coordinating the work of an entire team. Her sharp mind and attention to detail were finally being put to good use. Morning coffee with Julian stretched over 3 hours. They talked about everything: his restaurants, her new job, books they'd read over the years, places they'd been. No reminiscing about the past, no plans for the future. Just two adults having an interesting conversation. After that meeting, they began to call once a week. Julian would talk about problems with suppliers. Nika would share funny incidents from conferences. Sometimes he'd come into town on business and they'd meet for dinner. No romance or hidden meanings, just because they were comfortable in each other's company. Haley suddenly became interested in photography. She bought a used DSLR and enrolled in a course. On weekends, she wandered around the city, taking pictures of old courtyards, reflections in puddles, random passers-by. Her Instagram gradually turned into an art project. People wrote enthusiastic comments and asked to sell prints. At work, she was entrusted with a major project: the reconstruction of an old mansion for a contemporary art gallery. Haley spent evenings working on blueprints, selecting materials, arguing with contractors. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly engaged. Grant made an appointment with a therapist. At first, he just sat in silence. Then he started talking about his childhood, about his relationship with his parents, about his fear of not living up to other people's expectations. Gradually, he began to realize why he had always strived to conform to someone else's ideas about the right life. In his new apartment appeared a guitar. He played in his youth, but abandoned it when he began to build a career. Now in the evenings, he learned old songs, remembered the chords. The neighbors did not complain. He played well. Nika started writing. At first, just notes in a notebook, then serious articles about the technology of organizing events. Her materials were published by professional magazines, and she was invited to speak at industry conferences. She found her voice, clear, professional, without flirtation or coquetry. In early December, she received a job offer from Milan. A large company was looking for an event department manager. Good position, decent salary, new opportunities, and the city where Julian had his head office. She took her time answering. Some decisions needed to be made with a cool head. Haley happened to stumble across old photos from Venice on her phone, the same ones Nika had sent. Looked at them with different eyes, not as a devoted wife, but as a photographer, noting the good angles, the interesting play of light. I wrote Nika a short message. "You have a good eye. Too bad you used it for the wrong thing." Nika didn't reply right away. Texted in the evening, "Thanks, and I'm sorry for everything." They didn't pursue the dialogue. Some stories are better left in the past. Grant started running in the mornings. One day he met Haley in the park, taking pictures of the sunrise. They nodded silently and went their separate ways. Both realized that sometimes the best way to keep good memories alive was not to try to make new ones. Life went on as usual. The city was preparing for winter. Christmas decorations appeared in the windows. Festive garlands were installed on the streets. Each of them met these changes in his own way, without regrets about the past and fear of the future. Just living day by day, learning to be themselves and letting others do the same. Nika didn't like painting walls, especially white. It seemed too sterile for a small Milanese apartment. But Julian had insisted on freshening up the renovation before moving things in. He stood on a stepladder against the far wall and methodically swept the roller from top to bottom, humming a tune to himself. Outside the window, a fine autumn rain was drizzling. On the windowsill were 2 cups of cold coffee and a box of pizza, their impromptu lunch. The move had taken most of the day. First unloading the stuff, then assembling the furniture, now painting the walls. "You know," Nika ran her finger over the fresh paint, leaving a streak, "I thought I'd have more stuff. It turned out to be only 2 boxes of books and a suitcase of clothes." "Anything you want to buy?" Julian climbed down from the stepladder, looking at the result of his work. No. For the first time in my life, I think I have enough of what I have. She didn't just mean things. She and Julian hadn't seen each other more than a dozen times this year. He flew in on business. She went to conferences in Milan. No rushing things, no promises made. They were just learning to trust each other anew. She accepted the job offer in Milan only after 8 months, when she realized that she was ready for a change. Julian helped her find an apartment but didn't offer to move in with him. They both knew that some things had to be done gradually. "Shall we order dinner or go out?" he asked, wiping his hands with a rag. "Let's cook it ourselves. I have a pasta recipe I want to try." Julian raised his eyebrows in surprise. Nika used to hate cooking. "Don't laugh if it doesn't turn out well." She pulled the recipe tablet out of her bag. "I'm just learning." He silently hugged her from behind, his nose against the top of her head. His shirt smelled like paint and coffee. Nika covered her eyes. Such moments of quiet happiness still seemed a little out of place to her. On the kitchen table were papers. A lease, utility bills, a neighborhood plan. A new life spread out in folders. Somewhere between the pages, an old plane ticket was lost, the same one she'd flown to Venice with a year ago. Nika didn't throw it away. She left it as a reminder of how far she'd strayed from that version of herself. They spent the evening in the kitchen, Julian showing her how to cook pasta and Nika trying to follow his movements. It wasn't perfect, but it was edible. Then they sat on the floor for a long time, leaning against the freshly painted wall and passing each other a bottle of wine. They talked about work, about weekend plans, about the new restaurant Julian was going to open in the suburbs. Just a normal evening of two people starting a life together. No big words of love, no vows of eternal fidelity. Just the quiet realization that this time it could be right. Against all the advice of the guidebooks, Haley chose January for her trip to Venice. At that time, the city was shrouded in fog, which gave the ancient palazzos a mysterious look. Perfect lighting for black and white photography. This time she stayed in a small hotel on the outskirts of the city, away from the tourist routes. The hostess, an elderly Venetian woman, greeted her like an old acquaintance, ushered her into a room overlooking the narrow canal and brought her hot chocolate. Haley laid out her things, took out her camera. Over the year, it had become an extension of her hand. She'd learned to notice details, to catch the right light, to feel the moment. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from a client about the approval of a new restaurant project. Haley smiled. Work went on, even when she was on vacation. In the morning, she wandered the deserted streets, photographing the reflections of houses in frozen puddles, the wrinkled faces of the locals, the flocks of pigeons in Piazza San Marco. The city seemed different, or was it that she was looking at it through different eyes? In the small trattoria where she'd gone to warm herself, the same music was playing as the last time she'd been there. Haley ordered risotto and a glass of red wine. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from her mother. She probably wanted to talk about her love life again. Might as well call back tomorrow. In the evening, she sat in her hotel room, reviewing the day's pictures. A fine rain drizzled outside the window, and a lone gondola sailed slowly along the canal. She had come here to follow her husband that time, but now she was just taking pictures of the beauty of the moment. In her bag was an unread detective story. In her phone was an invitation to an architectural exhibition in Paris. In the mail was a draft of a new project. Her life was filled with things to do, plans to make, meetings to attend. Everything was the same as before, only now it was just her life, without regard for other people's expectations. From the open window came the smell of fresh baked goods from the neighboring bakery. Tomorrow she was going to get up early and watch the sunrise over the lagoon, and then maybe stop by the very same Hotel Danielle just for a coffee and to make sure the past was in the past. Haley pulled out a sketchbook and began to draw a plan for the future photo exhibition. The city outside the window was alive with lovers kissing on bridges, tourists confused by maps, waiters setting up tables in cafes. An ordinary winter evening in Venice, one of many in her new, so familiar and yet so different life.